The December 8th, 2011 meeting of the Ways and Means Committee of Monroe County Legislature will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Andrews. Mr. Barker. Chairman Daniele.
Here.
Mr. Esposito. Mr. Haney. Mr. Hyder. Mr. McCann. Mr. O'Brien. Dr. Quattro. Mr. Tucciarello. Mr. Yolovich.
This evening there are two public hearings scheduled. Ms. Rozzi?
An affidavit of publication and posting of this notice of the hearing on the proposed 2012 Monroe County operating budget and the hearing on the assessment rolls of the Pure Waters districts was published in the Daily Record and Rochester Business Journal and have been received and are on file in the clerk's office.
I declare now open public hearings on the 2012 assessment rolls for Rochester Pure Waters District, the Gates-Chili-Ogden Sewer District, Northwest Quadrant Pure Waters District, and Irondequoit Bay South Central Pure Waters District. Are there any speakers registered for these hearings?
There are no speakers registered this evening for those hearings.
Then I declare these public hearings closed. I now declare open the public hearing on the 2012 proposed annual Monroe County operating budget. And are there any speakers registered for this hearing?
There are 13 people registered for this hearing. Each speaker will be given 2 minutes in which to address the Ways and Means Committee. When your name is called, please come forward and address the committee and conclude your remarks when the timer sounds. And we thank you for your cooperation. Our first speaker will be Amy Waltauer.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I was here 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, about the lead swipe test and how it's affecting the city of Rochester and the budget and whatnot. There's a $224,000 amount that's allocated towards the lead swipes. It's actually at least twice as much spent on the lead swipes. They're the most inefficient way of finding lead-contaminated homes. Lead emissions are gone throughout the environment. They have through cars and other sources of lead. And if we're going to do lead swipes in houses that are put out for rent, I think we should be able to do it in everybody's house that any children go in at all. That'll be everybody's house here, and also be the houses that the kids go to visit for Grandma and Grandpa's house. If they're there a couple hours a week or just on the holidays, they can still get lead poisoning through it, and it can obviously hinder them. The money spent is not efficient. They found that the most efficient way of finding lead-contaminated homes was by the complaint process, which works pretty well. They call up the city of Rochester, they go and evaluate, and then it's tested, and that's probably the best way. We're not trying to take advantage of people. I'm a property manager in the city of Rochester. I live in the city of Rochester, so I know that it's required by law to give out a handout by the EPA of protecting your family from lead in your home. It describes how to prevent lead poison and how to protect your family and what to do if you are. So we're not taking advantage of people. We're not taking anything away. We're just asking you to be a little smarter with your money. Thank you. Bye.
Our next speaker is Ginny Deniger.
Hi, I'm Ginny Denninger. I'm a local realtor. What's going on in our city with the lead inspections and C of O process? basically has reduced our property values quite significantly. I used to have a lot of investment clients who, local and out of town, but they've really dried up. When I talk to them about why they choose not to invest in Rochester and they choose to go to other states, other counties, they're all telling me the C of O process is too cumbersome and the lead laws frighten them and they're very costly. I currently have a client who is selling a home, and part of the deal is that he has to have a new C of O. He has hesitated on asking for a new C of O because his does not expire for another few years. And the reason of hesitation is, well, if the deal doesn't go through, I don't want to start this whole process, because last time this happened, the inspector came in, cited me, I fixed everything, he came in to inspect and gave me a whole new list. These people just can't deal with this on a repeated basis. They're worried because of potential lawsuits due to the laws that have to do with the lead poisoning. This is costing more than just the money that we're here to discuss tonight. There is money lost in investment. There's empty homes. Even the children in our city are suffering because they are moved from one property to the other because of the way the inspections are done, both for lead and just C of O. They can't put roots down. So perhaps some of the issues, the social issues we have, are not due solely to lead. They could be due to environmental factors, such as transiency within their own community. They can't live in one area because they have to constantly move. This is not good for our city. We need to find another way to deal with this lead issue. And I don't think putting money in is really the way. We've put a lot in already. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Herman Cologne.
Hi there, how are you? Tonight you're going to hear a lot of emotional arguments regarding lead poisoning, and I'm here to put a little bit more rational twist on this. You know, lead oftentimes is blamed for things such as increased crime, increased school, or decreased school results, all the rest. You know, the fact is we don't know that these are the issues that are causing these. You know, there could be things such as poor schools, drug activity, poor parenting. You know, why hasn't crime dropped if lead has gone down in Monroe County? Decisions often are made on emotion and not fact. Just recently we had some legislation that was passed for landlords to install carbon monoxide detectors in all of their units. I was the first one to say, why? In, you know, almost 100 years of tenancy, how many times have you had a tenant that's been poisoned from carbon monoxide from a stove? Hardly ever, okay? But yet, New York State passes these laws based not on facts when you only have but 290 cases in 3 years in the entire United States, because one child in New York State was poisoned in a home that had a sleepover. That's oftentimes how we decide these things. The city inspection process was inefficient. Used to take 4 to 6 weeks to get an inspection and results from lead testing, costing the landlord and also costing the county to keep DSS clients in the shelters. The cost of the program is not $224,000. It was in the millions when you add on all these extra costs associated with the delays in the process. There was only 290 cases in 2010. The program has worked, and it's time to look for other ways to address the issue at this point. In my opinion, the simplest way is to look for visible signs of cracking and peeling paint. I think that's the cheapest solution at this point, and I think the most effective use of the county taxpayers' money. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Mel Callan.
Good evening. My name is Mel Callan. I'm a family nurse practitioner at Highland Family Medicine, and I am co-chair of the Coalition to Prevent Lead Poisoning. Lead poisoning in children. children from across the county, but the poison strikes mostly vulnerable children who have the misfortune of being born into families that are forced into less hazardous housing. There have been many arguments for and against the budget cuts to the city-county collaboration to eliminate this preventable condition. I'd like to address a few of these in the brief time I have with a focus on reliable scientific data. One, it has been said that tax dollars should be used for teaching tenants to clean the rented housing. This represents a gross misunderstanding of the science. A review of 12 studies showed that educational programs for parents had no effect on children's blood levels. However, the coalition does advocate for appropriate cleaning procedures. The county does not need to address this task. Two, it has been said that the focus should be on daycare centers. There is no evidence that daycare centers are the source of lead poisoning in Monroe County. In fact, the evidence is clear that the source of over 90% of the lead-poisoned children is 1 and 2 unit structures, which have been the focus of the county-city collaboration for inspections. For half of the $440,000 eliminated for the programs, the various programs in total eliminated for lead, these units could be inspected in a very targeted area. Three, it has been said that the county-city collaboration for inspection has been unsuccessful and the county should focus on lead abatement. The county, the city, and 3 other partners, including the coalition, received an EPA award in 2010 for the tremendous success of reducing lead hazards and the number of lead-poisoned children from 1,200 to 290 new cases yearly. Please be mindful that lead abatement is a very expensive and unnecessary route to take. We need to continue making homes lead safe with less expensive options. I just asked the legislature to be bold in its leadership and request that the city and county partake in discussions to review options that would maintain a reasonable inspection program and not use tax dollars to place children in lead hazardous homes. This is a health problem which will become a criminal justice problem as well as a special education problem. The city doesn't have a health department. The county does. This is a county-city need for collaboration. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Joseph Callen.
Good evening. Which of any of us here, if going home tonight, found our kitchen sink water faucet running full bore, fresh water running down the drain, wouldn't immediately turn it off? We'd do it for 2 reasons. First, because of the shame it would be to squander a valuable natural resource. And if this didn't motivate us on its own merits, then it would be the certain knowledge that at some future point, the water bill will come due. The first reason is a moral one. The second, financial. I'm here as a citizen of this community who finds it necessary with some embarrassment to remind our policymakers in their consideration of the budget that lead abatement and enforcement should not be cut in any way. Lead poisoning is, in the overall, a clear morality issue. Children of our county are getting sick. Since this isn't a time to mince words, let me be as clear as I can about that. If as a child you eat lead, you get stupider. If you get stupider, you are likely to make stupid decisions when you grow up. You might end up in prisons or become a statistic in our beleaguered healthcare system. And worst of all, you have been, through no fault of your own, summarily robbed of your birthright. Like the water faucet in your kitchen analogy, the bill will come and it will be high. We know the problem, we know the fix, we've made great strides so far. We are on the cusp of success. We need also to think about the unconscionable moral failings by all of us if we shortchange the least powerful among us. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Elizabeth McDade. Ralph Spezio.
Good evening. My name is Ralph Spezio. I'm the former principal of School 17 and one of the founding members of the Coalition to Prevent Lead Poisoning. The issue of childhood lead poisoning can get really complicated, but we know some things already, and we know them to be true. We know that lead poisoning is absolutely devastating to children. It devours their IQ and it steals their future. It's a potent neurotoxin, and the research is very clear on this. We know that as principal, I was able to document that almost half of my school enrollment and 100% of my special ed children were coming to school from the surrounding neighborhood with lead poisoning. We know that Monroe County has spent hundreds of millions of dollars to support systems for children with special needs. And I repeat, 100% of my special ed children were lead poisoned. And we know that in communities where leaders allow an atmosphere of finger pointing and blame, the children are always the losers. But I hope we can all agree on one thing here, that the children are completely innocent. They don't have a vote or they don't have a voice on this. They are completely helpless and dependent upon the adults in this community to protect them. County legislators, if you do not like the existing city-county intervention that protects children from lead poisoning, then come to the table and let's fix it. If you do not like the existing intervention altogether, then let's scrap it and then redesign a new intervention. But you cannot just simply defund and walk away from the existing program without putting something else in its place to protect children. If you do that, that's just wrong. That's morally wrong. What's the right thing to do? Create an ad hoc committee for the city and county representatives to either fix or redesign this system to protect vulnerable children from the devastation of lead poisoning, defunding a program that protects children without providing an alternative safeguard program and to put in its place is the wrong thing for adult leaders to do in a responsible society. So please, we still have time to do the right thing here. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lucille Genovola. Mary D'Alessandro.
Good evening. I'm Mary D'Alessandro, and I am here on behalf of myself and also as president of the New York State Coalition of Property Owners. I don't know why everybody is here fighting for the funding for lead, because the $224,000 was never intended for lead inspections. It was for QHI inspections, and those have stopped. So why is everybody here wanting more from the county? They were for QHIs, and the county graciously extended a hand to the city to say, you know, while the QHIs are here, you can use this as an inspection process. Well, the QHIs have stopped, so the money stopped. And the QHIs stopped because the city inspectors were incompetent, because they did not fulfill the contractual agreement. We had to wait up to 4 weeks for appointments. That's not right. That leaves children. You're talking about children. It leaves them in shelters. It leaves our apartments at risk for vandalism and arson. And we do have a program. The city has a lead ordinance. These are the experts. They know. Let them do their job. I'd like to thank Kelly Reed and her co-workers for having the courage to stand up to defend that this money should not be given to the city. I thank her because the county has done a wonderful, wonderful job in protecting our children. And we will never go down to 0 children until the parents take care of their children, because we have done our job, and we have done it well, very, very well, and we have put millions into this effort. And there are other children with other needs that need that money. There was a man here that needed money for homeless children. We need to spread the money. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jim Pacelta.
Good evening. My name is Jim Peralta. I'm an independent lead-based paint inspector here in Rochester. I'm also a member of the Coalition to Prevent Lead Poisoning. Children receiving public assistance have the highest rate of lead poisoning in this community. A study performed a few years ago by Monroe County showed that the lead dangers in 100% of the DHS-funded housing tested at 100% hazardous. I think I messed that up. Lead poisoning is not a temporary condition. It causes permanent brain damage. I've seen several cases of it, and it's very sad. Homeowners, property owners are constantly working on their properties, and they're constantly painting them, turning them over, different clients. Lead dust is what we're talking about. Lead dust comes from renovation. The more renovation on a property, the more chance there is for lead dust. That's why it's critical that I believe that the dust wipe testing should continue. Many of the rental properties in the city are approaching 100 years old, and these properties are in need of repair, and the landlords do a good job. And I think the program has cleaned up a lot of housing. I think it's done a good job. I think the county's done a good job. The city's done a good job. And I think there's more to be done. It only makes sense that in homes that are renovated the most, repaired the most, and have the frequent turnover should be tested. They should be looked at. Right now it's every 2 years. I think it should be more frequent. But, you know, given what it is, I think it's done a great job. The number of children has dropped in the last 8 or 9 years from over 1,000 kids poisoned a year in this county to 290 last year. And the county should be commended for that. But this is not the time to pull back. This is the time to continue. We're on our last leg, and I think it's important that it continues. Thank you.
David Arias.
Hi, my name is Dave Adius, and it's been a while since I've been here, and I think the last time I was here speaking in front of you, I was speaking about lead poisoning, and it's really sad that I have to come back and do this again. And I think I'm going to tell pretty much the same story, but first I'm going to start with just in support of what Ralph Spezio said, that if we're not happy with the way we're dealing with lead poisoning, we need to change it or revise it. We shouldn't just defund it and drop it. And I'm going to finish up with something that's on that. But I have a story, and yes, it's emotional for me, and if it's not for you, that's fine. I used to teach at St. Joseph's Villa, and I had an 8th grade class, and I had a student named Willie. And I didn't find this out until 2 or 3 months into the school year, but Willie had lead poisoning. So he was 14 years old, and he was in 8th grade, and he was reading at a 2nd grade level. And when there were other kids in the room, he would get very defensive. He was always trying to be a tough guy. But when it was just he and I in the room, he would try to do his schoolwork, and he would struggle. And the look on his face, he was very frustrated because he knew he should be able to read this stuff, and he couldn't. And he knew why, and there was nothing he could do about it. And he would almost be in tears when this would happen. So now I'm going to get unemotional about it. I have not seen Willie for almost 10 years. But I bet you one thing, that somebody, some government somewhere is spending a lot of money on him, whether it's through social services, through the prison system, or some capacity like that. So you can use whatever cliche you want about the humanity and human rights and just like that, or you can talk about the fiscal responsibility that we also have to taxpayers, and instead of, you can pay that money now for lead abatement and dealing with it, or you can pay for it later with social services and prisons. If only I had 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. David All.
My name is David All. I'm speaking on behalf of the New York State Coalition of Property Owners and Businesses. You'll hear a lot of emotional appeals tonight. I just want to talk about the science. When we talk about inspections, we're talking about dust wipes. The purpose and protocol for these dust wipes is laid out in the Code of Federal Regulations. They are used after an abatement project because abatement projects also tend to raise up a lot of dust, which may contain lead. The requirements of the federal regulations are that following an abatement project, you must thoroughly clean the work area. And the way you prove that you've cleaned the work area is to pass a dust wipe. For those of you who are not familiar with the protocol, the inspector will mark out a 1 square foot area on the floor, take out a dust wipe from a sealed container, wipe that area, and send that wipe off for chemical analysis. If that analysis shows more than 40 millionths of a gram of lead, the test fails. The remedy for a failed test is that the component corresponding to that test must be re-cleaned and retested. The point is that these tests are not an indication of the presence or absence of lead hazards in a house. They are an indication of whether the house has been adequately cleaned in preparation for the test. That's what they were designed to do. A house that is full of lead paint will pass one of these tests if it has been cleaned recently. A house that is not, that has no lead paint at all, will likely fail one of these tests if it hasn't been cleaned recently. There's a scientific study to that effect in the papers I've just handed to the chair. Now, Rochester has decided to go out and perform these tests periodically in all rental properties, 85% of which are not occupied by children under the age of 6. A national study showed that 33% of houses tested at random would fail these levels. Rochester's rate is 13%. Why? Because Rochester's remedy for a failed sample is to prosecute and fine the landlord. So landlords know that once every 6 years they have to thoroughly clean their tenant's house in preparation for the test. The question before you is not whether we should all work together to do everything in our power to eliminate childhood lead poisoning. Of course we should. The question is whether these inspections are an effective way of going about doing that. If you understand the science, you will understand that the answer is no. The city of Rochester is free to spend over $1 million of its taxpayers' money on tests that will do absolutely nothing to protect children from lead poisoning. This legislature is free to make a different choice. I urge you to do so. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Jeff Kazarowski.
Hi, I'm Jeff Kazarowski. I'm the Executive Director of the Children's Agenda. This is actually our 10th consecutive year of analyzing the Monroe County budget. I know that members of the administration and the legislators have received a copy of our analysis and recommendations, and if anyone else would like them, I have copies available this evening. I want to just give a brief overview of our findings and then address 4 areas. First of all, we want to say that in today's tight economy, Monroe County has had to make some really tough choices about funding for children's programs, and we commend the county leadership actually for holding steady on some critical evidence-based and effective programs for children and families that were very much at risk in this budget. We also have some areas for concern, and I want to highlight a couple of those in what I say. The first area that we're concerned about is the area of homeless youth. So to be really clear, this is the compromised status of homeless youth in Rochester is due to a state cut of nearly 50% in funding coming here over the course of the last 2 years. Nonetheless, the number of homeless youth are increasing in Monroe County. The number of homeless families are increasing in Monroe County and throughout the state. And we've advocated to the state about this. We're shocked that the state would make this kind of cut. And nonetheless, here we are with the funding decreased and the number of kids who are homeless that we're concerned about their safety and the safety of our community for increasing. And so we hope that the county can find some additional dollars to make funding available to support the increased needs of homeless youth in our community. Second area that we're worried about is the Youth Bureau. Again, this is an area where the state has persistently made cuts. This is county programs countywide that fund positive youth development, that help avoid problems like teen pregnancy, that help avoid injuries to kids, to help avoid violent and aggressive behavior and safety concerns for kids. And again, these dollars are being compromised from the state. And so, particularly around the Rochester-Monroe County Youth Bureau, we hope that the county can continue its proactive approach of involving agencies in the community and the city and folks to work together to really create a county community team to try and figure out what we're going to do to have preventive services and developmentally appropriate services for older kids through the Youth Bureau. Two more areas. The third area is preventive services. We really want to applaud the county for making evidence-based effective home visitation services a priority in this budget. Those programs are continued. Programs like Nurse Family Partnership and Building Healthy Children that are really important to get our kids on track and families on track and save us all money in the long run. We are asking, we're hoping that the county can commit to a policy in 2012 of taking those programs to capacity by 2015 to achieve even better outcomes for the health and well-being of kids. The last area that I want to just mention is the area of lead. We recommend that the county, including both the Department of Human Services and Department of Public Health, work with the city and continue to participate with the coalition to prevent lead poisoning to ensure that there will be no decrease in the number of homes with lead hazards that are identified, thus placing no additional children at risk. We have several other important commendations and concerns in our analysis and report, and we hope you can take a look at those.
Elizabeth McDade. Lucille Genavola.
I have just a brief story of an experience. I was getting an apartment ready for a young woman who was 9 months pregnant. Before we were quite finished, she had a falling out with her mother. They threw her out of the house. She had no place to go. She begged me to let her stay in this apartment. I said, it's not quite ready. Please, I don't want to go to a shelter. She was expecting the baby in a couple weeks. She was hysterical. I let her stay in the apartment. All the painting was finished. All the windows were in good shape. I knew there was no problem with any lead. But it took, before someone came in and inspected for lead, it took them 3 weeks. Not only did I hire extra help to have me finishing up, putting up some last-minute moldings and hardware on the cupboards, but I was never compensated for the 3 weeks because they didn't do the lead-based paint quickly. Had they done it within a few days after she moved in, I could feel better about the whole situation. I'm not familiar with how social services works, but I didn't feel that was very effective. Like I say, I didn't want a hysterical mother and what that could cause her unborn child to be homeless for no place to go and was insistent she wasn't going to go to a shelter. I don't know if that has any insight on your problem that we're discussing here tonight, but just wanted to tell you my experience.
This concludes the public hearing.
There being no other speakers on this subject, I declare this public hearing closed. Are there any speakers signed up for the general public forum?
There are no speakers signed up for the general public forum.
Is there anyone present who would like to address this committee at this time who did not sign up to speak? At this time, I would like to introduce Scott Adair, Chief Financial Officer for Monroe County Finance Department, who is here to present the 2012 proposed Monroe County operating budget. Welcome. You're welcome.
Don't read too much into that first slide that showed up there. Good evening, and thank you, Chairman Daniele and the members of the Ways and Means Committee to allow me the opportunity to present the County Executive's 2012 proposed budget. The proposed budget maintains a flat property tax rate of $8.99. It complies with the county's Taxpayer Protection Act that this body passed in 2007. And it will comply with the new New York State property tax cap once all the final details are worked out regarding that calculation, which should be later on this week or early next week. Overall, as you're all aware of at this point in time, the proposed 2012 budget is broken down into two components. Those two components are our operating budget and our grant budget. The overall operating budget is increasing by 0.9%. The operating budget is further broken down into four categories: mandated spending, non-mandated spending, debt service, and non-mandated user fee supported. The non-mandated user fee supported areas are areas like our Monroe Community Hospital, the Greater Rochester International Airport, and portions of our Department of Environmental Services. The grants portion of our budget is down approximately 2.6% from 2011. These reductions impact almost all of our functional areas receiving grants, and they will be highlighted in an upcoming slide. The 2012 operating budget. For many of you, you've sat through now 6 presentations, this being the 7th to the Legislature. Tonight's committee has overall budgetary oversight over the entire county budget. We've already covered in the previous presentations areas such as public safety, recreation and education, human and health services, transportation, and environmental. This evening we'll cover areas included in the payment to municipal sharing partners and the other area of the operating budget. So, Jamie, you're wondering, where does the money come from to support these operating expenses? These monies come from a variety of sources. Predominantly, it's property taxes. 37.4% of our budget is supported by property taxes. There's also revenues received from enterprise funds. Those are those funds that I just talked about as non-mandated user fee supported, such as the airport and the hospital. That's 21.9%. 18.5% of our budget is supported by state and federal revenues. And 12.2% comes from other sources, such as our miscellaneous revenues, charges to other governments, and pilot payments. As I mentioned previously, our grant budget of $172 million, these are the functional areas that comprise that $172 million. And we noted in the previous slide that it was down approximately $4.6 million, or 2.6% from 2011. Those areas of reduction are seen in the human services area and the public safety area. The recreation and educational area is flat from 2011, and the health services area is up a couple $100,000. And finally, regarding the overall budget, our mandated and non-mandated spending percentages for 2012 remain at the same levels as they were in 2011. 82% of our budget is mandated, while 18% is non-mandated. And finally, the last area of the presentation this evening, and then we will take questions regarding the 2012 operating budget, are the last few departments in the county that have not been covered in a previous presentation. These areas include the Board of Elections, which is seeing a slight increase from 2011 of $450,000. Generally, the reason for this increase is due to the upcoming presidential primary and general election this upcoming year. The second area where we see our largest increase in these departments is in finance, in the area of unallocated, where some legislators like to refer to all the good stuff is. This increased by $3.4 million from last year, which is largely the payment to our sharing partners in order to make them whole for the sales tax agreement. Both our law department and county clerks have decreased their appropriations from the 2011 budget, and all the other areas listed on this slide are relatively flat with small changes between 2011 and 2012. They include the Communications Department, the Information Services Department, Human Resources, the County Executive's Office, and finally this honorable body, the County Legislature. With that, Chairman Daniele, that concludes my presentation. I'll be more than willing to, once I get this stuff shut down, take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO Scott Adair, extraordinaire, for all your hard work in putting this budget together with your staff and team. At this time, we're going to open it up to questions. At this time, are there any questions that this committee would like to address through the chair to the administration? Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the presentation this evening and for the information that was received today from the administration to some answers to some of our questions, as well as taking the time to review this budget with us this evening and over the past couple of weeks. My first question is kind of a follow-up from the public speakers and a topic we talked about a bit in Human Services regarding the lead prevention program and funding. My question is through the chair. Commissioner Reed, the letter, the Coalition to Prevent Lead Poisoning addressed to you is dated December 1st and requested a meeting to discuss a possible strategic investment, and I wondered if you had responded to that letter and agreed to meet to discuss this. Thank you.
Through you, Chairman. I did receive that letter, and what I said at the Human Services Committee continues to be my recommendation at this point. I think it's a decision of this legislature to determine whether you want to support the recommendation I've made with regard to the funding.
Through the chair then, so at this point in time you haven't scheduled a meeting with the coalition to discuss the contents of their letter?
Through the chair, the members of my staff meet with the coalition on a regular basis and have been meeting with the coalition for the past 2 years. We cut this funding in June of 2010, and we've been sitting at the table with them since that period of time.
I recognize that through the chair, but this letter does request a meeting with you to talk about all the issues that were raised at Human Services and your perspective on the program as well as their perspective on it. And so specifically my question is, do you plan to issue a response to their letter and to now set up a meeting specifically to discuss the issues that have been raised at this point in time?
Through the chair, as I said, I've made a recommendation that the funding not continue through the Department of Human Services because I don't find the investment to be an effective investment when a decision has been made with regard to the budget for this year. we can talk further, but at this point, I believe that that decision is pending. I don't know what we have to discuss at this point.
Okay. Thank you. A couple other follow-up questions from previous meetings. Through the chair, what would be the cost of the 2.5% raise for the M&Ps for 2012?
Through the chair, is previously noted by the fact that we provided some answers to the questions that were provided by the Democratic Caucus earlier this week. We will follow up with the answer to that. We don't have that information available this evening.
Thank you. Can I expect an answer then before the full legislature meeting?
Through the chair, absolutely.
And is that the same for all the questions that weren't answered today?
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you. Through the chair, the budget reports savings of $2 million from eliminating 42 vacancies for 2012. Is that a net savings or a gross savings? And if that's a gross savings, then what is the net savings from eliminating those positions?
Through the chair, the $2 million that you referenced is a gross savings. The net savings is approximately $1.3 to $1.4 million.
Thanks. A couple other questions. In the 2011 budget, there was projected savings of $1.7 million from the early retiree reinsurance program. How much was realized in 2011 through the chair?
Through the chair, at this point in time, we've realized 1.5 with an additional payment still in process at this point.
Through the chair then, so do you expect to realize the full 1.7 by the end of the year?
Through the chair, yes, we do.
Thanks. And in the answers we received today, it looks like you're projecting $2.4 million to realize for that program for 2012. Is that accurate?
Through the chair, that's accurate.
And how long does that program exist for? My understanding is it's going to end soon. Is that correct?
Through the chair, our understanding is 2012 will be the last year of that program.
Thank you. And that's a federal program, is that correct, through the Patient Care and Affordability Act that President Obama passed?
Through the chair, I don't know the actual act that you're referencing, but yes, it was part of the health care reform.
Through the chair, at this point in time, are there any contract settlements with the Federation of Social Workers or CSEA?
Through the chair, no.
In previous years, it's been discussed that you anticipate if there are settlements, which of course we hope there will be at some point in time, that those will be cost neutral to the county. Is that still your expectation?
Through the chair, yes.
In the area of health insurance, in 2011, it was stated that the county spends $65 million on health insurance. The budget projects to spend $67.5 million for 2012, which is a $2.5 million increase. And yet there were reported savings of $8 million for the county for 2012 in health insurance. Can I just get an explanation of how that happens?
Through the chair, yes. The $8 million referenced when we released the budget regarding the savings is part of was part of the projected deficit for 2012. And ultimately, we realized savings through negotiations with our healthcare provider to get us down to the $67.5 million appropriation in this particular budget.
Through the chair, then, does that mean the 2011 figure was low? So the actual costs for 2011 were above $65 million?
Through the chair, no.
And can you explain your answer further? I didn't follow.
Through the chair, as we provide in the budget book, is a projection of the 2012 and 2013 deficits as they move forward as part of the overall budget. Included in there was an increase to health insurance that did not materialize through the negotiations with our health insurance provider.
What was the projected increase?
Through the chair, I believe it was in the neighborhood in the small teen percentage, but I don't have that information right here in front of me, but I can get that to you.
And thank you. And then what was the actual increase?
Through the chair, that would be the $2.5 million you identified earlier.
And what percentage is that?
The through the chair, approximately 3.5%.
Through the chair, then, so is that a 3.5% increase on all the plans that the county has for 2012, the premium rates?
Through the chair, the premiums are flat for this particular budget year. There's changes in plans based on employee enrollment, so that's the reason for the increase.
Sorry, I don't follow. If there's a 3.5% increase, where is that coming from then, if it's not coming from the premium costs?
Through the chair, employees change plans during the year, during the open enrollment period, and thus the fluctuation of that enrollment change impacts what the overall cost is to the county. That's what's budgeted for here.
So if I follow then, so there's a $2.5 million increase in health insurance costs for next year because employees have opted into cheaper health insurance plans? Is that accurate?
Through the chair, it would be more expensive plans moving from a single to a family plan or some other type plan where the cost is actually going up to the county.
I'm sorry, I'm still not following then, because if you realize a savings of $8 million, but then employees are opting into more expensive plans because they're going from singles to families, then I don't understand how that results in $8 million savings.
Through the chair, I think we're talking on two different planets here. Effectively, the $8 million savings is resulting from the fact that we projected a cost in the 2011 budget as to what health insurance would be costing us in 2012. We realized $8 million in savings from what our projection was. Subsequently, people change plans, their medical needs change during the year, and we're providing an additional appropriation to support that in the 2012 budget.
Then can I just, for I think my final point then to clarify then, is the 3.5% you referenced the premium increase for 2012, or is there no, premiums are flat for 2012, there's no increase?
Through the chair, to repeat my earlier answer, there is no premium increase. It's changes in plans from employees.
Thank you. And through the chair now, it's pretty miraculous to have no premium increase in these days in health insurance. And I wondered if you could explain how you, I know you said you had negotiations, but without the settlement of any contracts that we're aware of or that have come before us, how would it be possible to have a 0% increase in the premiums for 2012?
Through the chair, that's part of the process of the negotiations with our health care provider. You'd have to ask them that question. This is what we worked out as far as our deal goes.
Okay, thank you. Under the human resources area, there's a bullet point on page 135 that says that for 2012 you plan to initiate retiree health insurance buy-down, buy-up plan to reduce county expenses. Can you explain what that is?
Through the chair, we're presently trying to locate our human resources director to answer that question.
Legislator Andrews, would you mind repeating the question?
Sure. Through the chair, the sixth bullet point on page 135 indicates you plan to initiate retiree health insurance buy-down, buy-up plans to reduce county expenses in 2012. And my question is, what is that?
Through the chair, that bullet point has been part of our objectives for a number of years, and we have not gone to implementation with it. But what it would be is we have a number of retirees who receive 100% paid for health insurance, and many of them are in outdated, expensive plans, and we would provide them with the opportunity to either receive a cash payment in exchange for agreeing to a more reasonably priced plan, or if they were to leave our health insurance completely, we would give them a larger payment So that is what the theory behind the bullet point is.
Thank you. Then, if this has been in here for several years and it maintains in here for this year, do you expect that in 2012 will be the year that you move forward with it?
Through the chair, that is my hope.
Thank you. While you're here, the previous page under your department also has a bullet point that reads as one of your accomplishments that you brought county employee retiree health plans to market to assess potential savings from becoming self-insured. Can you explain what that is a reference to?
Through the chair, one of our larger expense areas is health insurance for employees as well as retirees who are receiving health insurance from the county. And so this past fall, we took the health insurance plan to market and received responses. We reviewed them and were able to achieve significant savings in health insurance, resulting in a 0% increase in health insurance premiums for 2012. So that is what that means.
The bullet point references being self-insured. Is that something that you chose to do then, to realize a 0% premium increase?
Do you know what the answer is? Just answer it. Through the chair, no, we did not become self-insured. The results of the marketing of the plan demonstrated that the highest level of guaranteed savings were by maintaining our experience-related nature of the health plan.
Thank you. In 2012, do you anticipate pursuing becoming self-insured?
Through the chair, no.
Thanks. Turning to another area of the budget that was cut in 2011 was a pretrial release. I believe it realized a $450,000 cut last year. Is there any cut included in the 2012 budget for pretrial release?
Through the chair, no.
Back to the operating budget. On one of your slides, I was just interested in sort of some trends here where if you, in kind of comparing the Human Services Department with the Public Safety Department, over the years we spent a great amount of time talking about human services being consuming so much of the budget for the county, but in looking over the past few years, it looks like, in the operating budget at least, that human services expenses are actually decreasing while public safety expenses are increasing, close to a point where human services is $219 million and then public safety is $207 million. And if those trends continue, then I would expect that at some point soon in the future that public safety will actually take over as being more expensive than human services for the budget. And so my question is, because we spend so much time talking about human services costs and how to control those costs, what are we doing at this point in time to control our increasing public safety costs?
Through the chair, as part of the annual budget process and reviewing things with various departments, we effectively go through each line item with each department head and their staff to determine the appropriate amount of spending. Your analysis is spot on. It could potentially happen, but a lot of things could potentially happen regarding county budgets and state budgets and the federal government budgets. Some of it's speculative from your perspective that you're implying here, and so I don't necessarily know that we can say that those two numbers will cross, but it's entirely possible that they could. But we continue to work with our public safety department and our human services department, as well as all the departments inside of the county, to control expenses and attempt to maximize revenue sources that are available to them as we do each year in the budget process.
Thanks. I guess I would certainly hope to see that there would be an increased focus in on public safety expenses, since this does seem to be an increasingly large portion of our budget. And I know that we've had great strides in decreasing and streamlining some of our human services costs while hopefully still providing effective services. So I think it does need to be something that this body focuses in on in the upcoming years, especially as we continue to deal with dwindling resources. In the public safety area, the M3S payment, I think you answered today that the payment for 2012 will be $8.5 million, which I think is what it was scheduled to be on the initial M3S schedule of payments. Is it still are we still my first question through the chair is, are we still following that schedule of payments for M3S?
Through the chair, I believe through a request during the year from Legislator O'Brien, you received the updated payment schedule. I'm not sure which payment schedule you're actually referring. There was an initial one and then a revised one that kept the total payments at the equal amount of the first draft, but there were some fluctuations in years. But $8.5 million is the payment for 2012, yes.
Thank you. And then what's the payment anticipated to be for 2013?
Through the chair, I don't have the schedule right here in front of me, but I can get that back to you.
Thank you. Just a couple other questions. Could I request a breakdown of the legal services contracts by contract and amount, please, for 2012?
Through the chair, certainly.
And then turning to a couple other human services issues, I'd just like to, again, through the chair, request a further explanation regarding the COPS funding. I thought I had heard during human services that COPS funding was going to be or had been eliminated by New York State for 2012, but I was clearly wrong. And so I would request at this point in time just an explanation of how the COPS funding is working for 2012, because I understand Nurse Family Partnerships moving over to Department of Health, and same with the perinatal home visiting program. That's why it doesn't appear here under the COPS funding list that you provided today. But there still are significant cuts to Hillside and Encompass, as well as, totaling $7 million overall. So could I just get a further explanation in terms of what's happening under COPS?
Through the chair, as we attempted to explain, and we'll try to provide additional details here this evening, in human services, COPS funding from the state was reduced significantly during this past budget year. Was not eliminated, and if that was stated by this table or by myself, I apologize for that. That was not what actually happened. It has been significantly reduced. That funding is being provided to both the and now I'm going to draw a blank, and so I'm going to look for the human services folks to help me out here. Yeah. Thank you. The COPS funding is now being provided to Hillside and Encompass at this point in time.
Through the chair, it's only being provided to Hillside and Encompass?
Through the chair, apologize, I misspoke. I need to add one more program to that. Building Healthy Children is also receiving COPS funding.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And again, I know we talked about Hillside and Encompass a little bit in human services. I just want to follow up on that. Both programs are taking significant cuts, and I understand that's because of this reduced state funding for the COPS program. Is the county making up any additional funding to either one of those two programs for 2012?
Through the chair, no.
Thank you. And again, I'll ask one last time. Do you have any idea if the programs have secured funding from another source to keep themselves whole?
Through the chair, no, we do not.
Okay. Another human services issue, you provided today the cuts under the runaway and homeless youth programs, and there are a lot of programs seeing some pretty significant cuts for 2012. Can you just describe, because I'm not familiar with each of them, what services are going to be lost as a result of those cuts for 2012?
Through the chair, first let me clarify that The cuts that the Youth Bureau has experienced are state cuts, and the cuts that our programs have experienced are as a result of those state cuts. Let me also tell you that many of the Youth Bureau contracts that we've had were cut fairly substantially. We held the cuts to the runaway and homeless youth programs to 31% to try to reduce the impact that we were having on our runaway and homeless youth programs. The Youth Bureau funds several runaway and homeless youth programs. A lot of that money is spent on the case management services that are provided by those organizations. However, if you look at our budget with regard to the support that we provide to runaway and homeless youth programs, only from the Youth Bureau perspective, you are not seeing the full perspective of how we provide services for runaway and homeless youth. There is also support provided through the Financial Assistance Division, where we actually employ a youth specialist who works with individual runaways and their parents to reunite them. Helping families to reunification is, of course, our first priority if there is no abuse or neglect occurring and there is no child protective involvement. However, we also, if that's not a possibility, we seek alternatives in the family or through family friends. And when all of those options are exhausted, we have a second chance home through Melita House that we provide as well. It's important to realize that housing homeless people is a mandate in the Financial Assistance Division. So we still are providing support to runaway and homeless youth, just through a different venue. I'm not telling you I think that's an ideal venue, but I am telling you it is an alternative venue, and it has to be considered when you're looking at those cuts.
Through the chair, could you just talk a little bit about what case management means? I mean, that's paying for workers to work with the youth and manage all their cases?
Provide counseling for them, provide supports for them, look at what their other needs are, what got them to the place of being a runaway or homeless youth, and advocating on their behalf.
So that, through the chair, seems like a very important service on top of providing the housing
It's
itself.
absolutely a very important service.
And so the total cut then for the runaway homeless youth appears to be about $120,000. Is that accurate?
Through the chair, yes, that is accurate.
Thank you. And so this would be an area also that if the county were interested in increasing its support for these programs, because the services are so important and it is an area of concern, that we would certainly be free to do so through local dollars, correct? Should this body be so inclined?
Through the chair, that is an option for this body to consider, yes.
Thank you. I mean, I know that's something that I would encourage my colleagues to give some serious thought to, because it's a relatively minor amount of money in a $1 billion+ budget, and we certainly expend a lot of funds for a lot of different programs throughout the year, and this really seems to be an area of need where it seems like we could come up with $120,000 to continue to support these children who are so in need in our community. And that's all the questions I have at this point in time. Thank you.
Legislator O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a few questions. And through you, Mr. Chair, on page 408 of last year's budget, the projection was that we would receive $374 million in what is characterized as other non-departmental revenue in 2012. The 2012 budget now projects we'll receive about $405 million, or about $31 million in revenue more than last year's projection. I'm wondering if, through you, Mr. Chairman, someone could explain really what these revenues are and what accounts for the change in estimated revenue.
Through the chair, that line from the 2011 budget book and the 2012 budget book, the decrease is due to one-shot revenues not being included in that line for future years.
Okay, so the other, what's described as other non-departmental revenue is one-shot revenue?
Through the chair,
By and large?
through the chair, it's not by and large one-shot revenues. It's a number of things, but the difference between the two numbers, there's reoccurring revenues that are included in that line item of other non-departmental, and the reason why you see the fall off there is because any one-shot revenues which are not exercised at this particular time are not included in that particular budget projection.
Maybe I'm thinking about this backwards, and I apologize if I am, but last year it said we'd receive 374, and now it's saying we'll receive 405. So it's an increase?
Through the chair, not completely understanding your question, I apologize.
No.
The increase in the 2011 projection of what 2012 was and the number that's appearing in the 2012 budget under this particular line item, the difference would be the additional one-time revenues that we are planning on receiving in the budget. And then what I was explaining was the 2013 projection where you see that fall back down again because there are none of those revenues in that particular line.
Thanks for clarifying that for me. I appreciate it. Skipping around a little bit, in 2009, through you, Mr. Chairman, and in 2010, we appropriated $2.5 million for Monroe Community Hospital in the unallocated county general division of the finance department. The actual numbers for 2009 and 2010 is zero. And I'm just wondering what I'm sure there's an explanation. I was wondering what the explanation for that was.
Through the chair, through the federal IGT program, we wind up transferring that appropriation over into the Human Services Department to be able to generate additional revenue to fund the hospital operations. It ultimately winds up effectively, I'll say, creating double the revenue for the hospital through that mechanism. And it is just that. It's a mechanism to provide additional federal revenue to the hospital.
Okay, thank you. There's also an interesting thing that the 2012 budget contains a line item that says it's $36.7 million in miscellaneous revenue on page 675, which is a big number and an interesting description of what that constitutes. Could we get, through you, Mr. Chairman, some explanation or some detail about what constitutes the $36.7 million in miscellaneous revenue?
Through the chair, and I believe this was provided in the earlier written response to your caucus, but it's $31 million in tax liens, $2.5 million in sale of buildings, $2.4 million in the earlier referenced retiree reinsurance program, and $800,000 of Medicare Part D funding.
Thank you, and if I had to have you do that twice because you'd already responded in writing, I apologize. I just have a couple more questions through you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed on page 124, why is the debt service appropriation for the Greater Rochester Outdoor Sports Facility going down by $120,000? I'm sure there's an explanation.
Through the chair, that would just be the normal pay down on the debt for that particular facility. So the appropriation necessary is less because the debt payment will be less this year.
And as a follow-up, would the expectation be that it would continue to be less and less in future years?
Through the chair, that would be my expectation, but without looking at the specific debt schedule, sometimes those have a tendency to blip in certain years, but I don't believe that is the case here.
Thank you. And lastly, through you, Mr. Chairman, why do we anticipate collecting $1 million, I guess exactly $1 million more in property tax penalties than in the previous year? It's on page 124, if it helps.
Through the chair, yes, it does. We anticipate, and we're responding to this question in writing, but what we see generally when we sell tax liens is an increase based on collection efforts of people paying their property taxes before those liens get sold. That's what that is primarily what that budgetary increase is for.
Thank you.
Legislator Haney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's begin with the revenue estimates, and through you, Mr. Chairman. I know, Mr. Adair, you've said it several times that you haven't yet finalized the tax cap calculation. Although I believe state law requires you to file the report before the legislature adopts the budget. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct, yes.
Could you give us an estimate as to what our taxing margin is? I mean, give or take a few $100,000 or anything?
Could if I had the right folder through the chair. I apologize. I don't seem to have that information here, but I believe that my last calculation of that number before we got a final number from one of the departments was in the neighborhood of $2.5 to $3 million below what the cap would allow us to collect. But I will provide that to you with the additional information because, as you point out, we do need to file that with the State Controller's Office before Tuesday or by Tuesday. So we should have that exact calculation shortly.
Okay, thank you. In the area of sales tax projections, through you, Mr. Chairman, it would appear to me that our sales tax revenue projections for next year are way below what we might reasonably anticipate. As you know, through the end of November this year, the total collections for Monroe County before the intercept withhold have been, for those 11 months, have been $362.9 million. They're running 5.88% ahead of the collections for the same period in the year 2010. If one assumes that December will also show a similar rate of increase, we're looking at gross collections for 2011 of $427.8 million. However, we're only estimating gross collections for 2012 of $417 million, or something on the magnitude of $10 million less than what the actual collections for this year are going to be. Why are we projecting such low sales tax collections?
Through the chair, as we go through the process of estimating what our sales tax revenue is going to be for 2011 in preparation of the 2012 budget, we basically projected an amount of $412 million for the end of 2011. And then we decided that based on our past historical experience, that increase would be approximately 1% from the previous year's projected final. The numbers that you referenced, the $427 million numbers, without looking at your projections, I don't know actually how they're calculated, so I'd need to take a look at those, but we are using a projection of $412 million as of the end of this year.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, well, the actual collections through November, as you know, have been $362.9 million. Which is a 5.88% increase over 2010. And my projection merely straight lines that 5.88% I mean, there's only one more year left in, one more month left in the fiscal year, in the state tax year, the fiscal year also. So with the tax, we know through November 30th that the sales tax collections are running way above what we projected. And, I mean, it would require an incredible drop in December collections, which isn't likely given what the press is reporting about Christmas sales. I mean, it becomes pretty obvious that we're underestimating sales tax collections by...
Legislator Haney, with all due respect, if I look at your numbers correctly, we overestimated by maybe 2.5% based on your calculations, which doesn't seem like a tremendous offset. 10 million over 420 million.
Well, the sales tax collections through November are running 5.88% ahead of last year.
Right.
We can get hopelessly tied up in numbers, and I'd be glad to sit and demonstrate my calculation to you. But I project that we're underestimating our share of the sales tax next year by about $5 million. Why? Let me rephrase the question.
As a percentage, what's $5 million?
That's $5 million on our net revenue, and our net revenue is is about 82, next year projected to be $86 million. Let me rephrase the question, and I'm certain you monitor the sales tax collections very, very closely. Isn't our county portion of sales tax revenue this year going to run about $5 million over what we budgeted?
Through the chair, our present projection is that revenue would possibly be over by about $1 million from what we budgeted in 2011. I think what we're doing here is we're dealing with a projection of sales tax revenue, which is an item that is extremely speculative, as you well know. This is a number that in previous years we've been hit, as with all local governments across the state, have been hit pretty hard with sales tax dropping in previous fiscal years. This is an area that we take very seriously and consider a very conservative estimate regarding what our projections are as sales tax goes, so we don't wind up in a situation where either our budget or our sharing partners' budgets are left with a hole at the end of the year. I stand by my projection of the $412 million for 2011, and I stand by the fact that we are anticipating in the budget a 1% increase for 2012.
I missed the number you said at the beginning of your explanation for what you're projecting the excess county share to be for the year. What was that number? For this year?
Through the chair, that was 1.5.
Well, okay. Your numbers, I mean, through you, Mr. Chairman, I realize sales tax went through a very difficult period with the economic collapse in 2008, 2009, and into 2010. But the numbers clearly indicate that sales tax collections are roaring back. But we can argue that out next Tuesday night.
Mr. Chairman, if I could
thing here.
Yes.
Historically, over the last 10 years, the sales tax revenue in Monroe County has averaged 1.9% a year.
Thank you.
And I would just remind the gentleman that the state records indicate that in the first 11 months of this year, the remittances are up 5.88%.
I respect your optimism for next year. I hope you're right.
Well, the 5.88% is an absolute number. That's not optimism at all. That's the state's data for the first 11 months of this year. Other revenues. And I appreciate your answer received today that, although to no one's surprise, that no, we haven't collected any rent from Frontier Field this year. Or your more optimistic approach of saying not yet. We both know this will happen about the time the cows fly. But, and I accept your explanation that we stick this revenue in every year to somehow protect some kind of a legal right to it. But isn't the result of this that at the end of the fiscal year, we are forced to book a provision for bad debts and expense equal to this uncollected revenue?
Through the chair, that would be correct, yes.
If we feel we have to budget the revenue every year, even though in our heart of hearts we know we won't collect it, and we know, therefore, that we're going to have to create this expense, namely a provision for bad debts, why don't we budget for the allowance for bad debts on this?
Through the chair, as a matter of course, we've previously never budgeted the bad debt expense, as you pointed out, and our practice would be continue to not budget for that. It's a non-cash item from our perspective, and it's one of those items that gets cloudy as you deal with the difference between the budget and the financial statements that we produce at the end of the year. Ultimately, that $1.5 million expense would appear in the financial statements, but not here in the budget, as you point out. The reality of it is in 2012, I think we potentially have quite an anomaly for Frontier Field, and the potential of receiving revenue in that regards could materialize, and thus I think it would be inappropriate to have an expense for the bad debt expense in the 2012 budget.
Why, by the grace of God, do we think we're going to collect money next year?
Through the chair, as you probably have noted, that there will be 2 minor league baseball teams playing in Frontier Field during 2012, and that stadium will be at or above capacity as far as usefulness goes. And so ultimately, we are anticipating that some revenue, if not all of it, will be collected in 2012 for this budget.
The other revenue of $36 million, which you provided the detail on in the communication today, $2.5 million is from the sale of assets, which is the Edwards buildings and the terminal building. I mean, at least in the case of the Edwards block buildings, they've been on the market for a year now, and nobody has nibbled at them. Last January, the press carried some reports that real estate developers sort of laughed at the hope that we'd get $2 million for those buildings. Why do we think that we're going to collect that we're going to be able to generate $2.5 million from the sale of these buildings?
And through the chair, the Gateway Edwards building, which is a $2 million portion of this, was effectively, after the first half of the year, not marketed as aggressively as it could have been. We will continue pursuing the fact that we could receive $2 million worth of revenue for that building, and the terminal building at $500,000, which is what our estimate is as far as the sale goes. Those two items contain the $2.5 million in revenue that we're anticipating, and we will do everything within our powers to eliminate those from the county inventory.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, since we've included the terminal building in these sales, I assume that means that we've abandoned any hope of renovating the building and getting out of the millions of dollars worth of leased space that we have?
Through the chair, I think as we talked about in last year's committee, the terminal building, the renovation of that building is cost prohibitive at this point in time, so we do not believe that it is something that we would renovate, and at this point in time we anticipate the sale of that in the 2012 budget.
The $500,000 from erroneous assessments, is that categorized on the tax bill as a chargeback?
Through the chair, effectively what gets charged back on the tax bill is what the actual erroneous assessments are. The $500,000 is effectively an expense and a revenue placed in the budget as I'll call it a placeholder for what those actual dollars are, and the erroneous assessments are ultimately charged back. That is correct.
Okay. The $2.4 million from retiree reinsurance, and if I missed this answer during the prior questions, I apologize. Through you, Mr. Chairman. What is this is this a new item, $2.4 million from retiree reinsurance?
Through the chair, it's not a new item. I believe the number was 1.7 or 1.8 million in the 2011 budget, and this is just the 2012 portion of this. As explained earlier, this program will be eliminated after 2012, so there will be no more reoccurring revenue regarding this.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chairman, on property tax penalties, are we planning to sell any tax liens between now and the end of the year, this year?
Through the chair, we are presently in negotiations to do that, yes.
So you do anticipate that we'll be selling some of the tax liens?
Through the chair, yes.
Well, every time you sell tax liens, the experience is that property tax penalties drop in the following year because we no longer collect the interest and penalties on the liens that we sold. How will, if we're going to be selling, and I know we anticipated selling 16 million of liens this year, if we still, when I saw the budget, I assumed it meant we weren't going to sell any. If we are in fact selling a block of tax liens this year, how can the interest and penalty number next year grow when we'll have a smaller delinquent tax base to be earning the interest and penalties on?
Through the chair, as explained earlier when I was commenting on the question from Legislator O'Brien, the 5.2, the increase, the $1 million, basically what we see in the year of the sale, which again, these are timed events to produce as much revenue as we can from the penalties and interest section of the budget. But what we see in the year of the sale is a lot of property taxpayers who would be sold liens to a third party ultimately come into the county to settle up. That is an occurrence that doesn't happen every year, but in the years that we have, the year previously that we sold them being 2007, we did see it, and we would anticipate that growth to be real growth in the property tax penalties area in 2012.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would understand the logic of that if we weren't selling liens this year. But you've said we anticipate selling liens this year. So our experience when we sold those liens at the end of 2007 was that the penalties and interest in 2008 dropped like a rock. I think they dropped only $2 million or something, and they've been slowly recovering ever since 2008. If we're selling the block of liens sometime in the next 21 days, we're not going to have those delinquent taxes to sell next year or to earn interest and penalties on next year. I don't understand how we can sell the liens this month and still continue to earn the same kind of interest and penalties next year.
Through the chair, as you are aware of, based on your previous experience in this position, that the reality of it is the majority of those revenues come from the most current tax liens. Those are the people that pay. The older tax liens are the liens that ultimately wind up going bad, and we have to foreclose on the property if that's what actually happens with them. So in the 2011 transaction, we would anticipate selling liens that are older and less likely to collect on that revenue. In the 2012 sale, we would be selling more current liens, which would ultimately help in our collection process, as I mentioned earlier, because people don't like to have their liens sold to a third party. They generally come in and pay off their tax liens at that point in time. And it also, in addition to that, the timing of when we sell things will help generate additional revenue regarding property tax penalties. So again, similar to the sales tax revenue, I stand firmly behind the $1 million increase in property tax penalties that we have budgeted for in 2012.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, on the hotel motel tax, our disbursements next year will be $6,332,000, which is down about $30,000 from this year, and that's because of the reduced debt service for the cultural center. I take it we're assuming that the revenue from the hotel motel tax is also going to be down $30,000 next year?
Through the chair, that is correct, yes.
With the economy finally beginning to improve, and with a bunch of baseball players from Scranton staying in Rochester hotels, as you pointed out, why would we expect the hotel motel tax to be less next year?
Through the chair, as you point out, the fact that the economy has improved, the hotel industry has not seen that significant increase that some other areas have. So hotel motel tax collections are not necessarily trending the same way that other revenue projections are. In addition to that, we believe that conservative budgeting from the standpoint of hotel motel tax and what we have to provide to the not-for-profits in the community that rely upon that, as well as the city, that the appropriate number to budget from a revenue standpoint is the $6.3 million at this point in time.
If the hotel motel tax collections actually exceed the $6.3 million, which we've agreed to give the not-for-profits in the city of Rochester, where does that money go?
Through the chair, that money would revert to the general fund.
So it would be revenue that is not currently budgeted in the general fund. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay. In informations, in switching to expenditures now, in information services, with the number of county employees slowly dropping over the years, why do things like the number of email accounts, telephone lines, network user accounts, etc., continue to increase? I would have anticipated there'd be a relationship to the number of county employees.
Through the chair, surprisingly enough, not all county employees have phones or email accounts, and subsequently, so when there's a shift, it means bringing another department onto the email system or providing them with phone services. So this number does not go in direct correlation to the number of county employees.
Switching to the county executive's office, where is the special counsel to the county executive budgeted?
Through the chair, that's budgeted in the law department.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I don't believe the position is listed in the position listing of the law department, is it? Page 788 is the position listing of the law department.
Through the chair, that one I'll have to get back to you on. I'm not 100% sure of why that is at this point in time, so I will provide that with the remaining questions.
Obviously, when you do, I'd like to know what the salary group is. Sticking with the crossover with the law department, I noticed that the assistant secretary to the county executive is budgeted in the law department. Why is that? Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair, that's another one I'll have to follow up with you on.
Okay, thank you. In the finance department, on page 473, I think it is, in the Treasury, office, there's an amount of $50,000 appropriated for property tax reports. I thought people bought property tax reports from the county. Who is the county paying $50,000 to for property tax reports?
Through the chair, this is an expenditure provided for generating those reports through our tax system, and apparently there are times during the year we need to have new reports written, and so that $50,000 appropriation is to provide for that service. We ultimately do charge back for that service and get reimbursed for it, and a chargeback not in the sense of a chargeback on the tax bill, but a chargeback to whomever we provide that report to.
So this is a charge to the Treasury office from, what do we call the computer people? The IT operation?
Through the chair, I believe this service is provided through a third party and not our information services department. I believe the third party is Hamer, is my understanding.
Okay. So we are paying a third party for. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I realize you don't have a thorough understanding of all 4 million numbers in the budget. But if in the follow-up you could be more specific as to what it is that we're buying and who it is that we're buying it from.
Certainly, I just did not expect you to go after a $50,000 number at this point in time, so I'm not prepared to answer that. But I do believe it is third-party services provided by Hamer, which is our computer consultant in the Treasury Department. but we will
Hamer is a company?
Hamer is a company, sorry if I didn't
okay.
clarify that before.
Okay, all right, scratch the request.
Thank you.
On page 475, real property tax service. In the interdepartmental charges, is paying, next year is going to pay $235,000 to the Public Safety Department for Central Police Services. Why does real property tax, and that's up from only $58,000 this year, why does real property tax service pay almost $250,000 to Central Police Services?
Through the chair, this is a somewhat complicated transaction, and I will try to explain it. As we talked about in public safety, as part of, I'll call it the patchwork system that we have regarding the mobile data terminals that are provided to all police agencies by the county, there's a charge for air cards that are provided to them in order to make sure that they have connectivity throughout not only the county but the particular jurisdiction that they are providing. The financial service, the real property tax area picks that up and actually charges it back through a chargeback line directly to those municipalities receiving those services. And that's the reason for the expense being shown here.
So public safety is charging real property tax service, and then real property tax service is including it in its chargeback on the county tax bills?
Through the chair, that's correct, yes.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that sounds like a devious way of getting some of the central police services into a chargeback. Is there a rational basis for that?
Through the chair, it is direct services provided to the municipalities using the service, and this is a mechanism that we use to charge back those municipalities.
Well, then why is it increasing from only $58,000 to $236,000?
Through the chair, that's because of increased activity regarding those particular air cards that are being provided.
That's like a 400 and some % increase. Wow. Pension costs. The very last page in the book says pension costs are going to be $29.7 million next year. Is this the actual amount that we expect to pay the state in February of 2012?
Through the chair, we're attempting to put this down in writing for you as far as the responses to the questions that you submitted earlier. But some of the questions I think I can answer here. The 29.7 is the county charge, the county portion of the payment to the retirement system.
And I assume we're going to elect the deferral again next year to the extent that we can?
Through the chair, we are going to elect the deferral. It probably will not be to the full extent of what we're provided based on the law that the State Controller's Office has regarding the deferral calculation.
How much roughly will we be deferring, that is, not paying next year?
Through the chair, we anticipate that being approximately $8 million.
In the debt schedules, and through you, Mr. Chairman, I'll show some of my ignorance here. On page 417, I'm not sure how to read these. For example, Fund 1248, County Office Building, Generator, etc. It says balance of obligations authorized and unborrowed, 50,000, less aid and other revenues on hand, 50,000, balance which may be borrowed, 0. Am I correct in reading this that we can't borrow any more money, but we have 50,000 available in the fund to spend? Is that the way one reads this?
Through the chair, that's certainly the way one could read this.
It's not the right way.
Without getting into too much detail, the $50,000 in the first column is the obligation that you, as the county legislature, have authorized us to borrow for this particular program. The $50,000 is aid or other revenues that have come in for this program that ultimately mean that we can't borrow any dollars here for this particular one because it's been offset. This is the ongoing discussion we have about bonding resolutions. Since we've received other aid regarding this particular authorization, we no longer have the ability to borrow off of this particular authorization.
But through you, Mr. Chairman, it doesn't mean there's 50,000 available to spend.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. So the next fund, 1257, which I think was the bonding resolutions for the downtown MCC campus, we have only $1 million left that we can bond on the existing resolutions.
Through the chair, you've stumped me with that one. Effectively, the $10 million is what was authorized to be borrowed for that. The balance which may be borrowed is ultimately the only expenses allowed to be borrowed in this particular project at this particular time. The less aid and other revenues on hand can be things that are anticipated as well as things that are actually here today regarding that particular project. And you are right on that project. That is the downtown campus project.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Adair, for your patience through this exercise.
Thank you, Legislator Haney. Are there any other questions regarding the 2012 budget? All right. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Nobody wants to stay for the approval of the minutes, apparently. Yeah, okay. It's very exciting. You have the minutes from the October 26th, 2011 meeting of the Ways and Means Committees in your folder. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of day today. As we get into new business, Legislator Haney, any opposition to moving the agenda with the exception of a few items? Or are there more than a few items?
254, 260, 262, 268, 273, 74, 75, 77, 80, and 84.
277, 280.
Yeah, I think we'll just
All righty.
we'll fluidly go through the other ones, but we want to certainly don't want to
All right.
keep you from asking any of those questions. So the next item on the agenda is new business. Madam Clerk.
Referral 11-254.
Moved by Legislator Yolovich, seconded by Legislator McCann. Yes, Legislator Haney.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, was an RFP issued? Were competitive quotes obtained for these physicals?
Through the chair, Lieutenant Paul DeLello with the Sheriff's Office. In the original referral, yes, there was, but not in the amendment.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, how much does the good doctor charge for a physical?
Through the chair, I had that information. I just don't have it with me right now. I can most certainly provide that, but I believe it was roughly $200.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? There being no further questions, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-255, authorized.
Moved by Legislator Barker, seconded by Legislator McCann. Any questions? Being no questions, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-256, authorized.
Moved by Legislator Barker, seconded by Legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion on this matter? Being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-257, acceptance of a grant.
Moved by Legislator Quattro, seconded by Legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? Being no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-258, acceptance
Moved by
of a
Legislator
grant.
Tucciarello, seconded by Legislator Yolovich. Is there any discussion? Being no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries.
Referral 11-259, authorized.
Moved by Legislator
intermunicipal-
Yolovich, seconded by Legislator McCann. Is there any discussion? Being no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-260, acceptance
Moved
of
by
a grant.
Legislator McCann, seconded by Legislator Barker. Legislator Haney.
And this, through you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
This grant is in the 2011 budget. The grant is down $73,000. Does this create a shortfall in the 2011 budget?
Through the chair, Steve Bowman. No, it does not. We have reduced our staff by one.
So while the grant is down, the expenditures will be down appropriately?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? There being no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-261, acceptance
Moved by
of
Legislator
grant.
Barker, seconded by Legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries.
Referral 11-262, acceptance
Moved by
of
Legislator
grant.
Quattro, seconded by Legislator Tucciarello. Legislator Haney.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Aside from the $32,000 for MCC, what is this money going to be spent on?
Through the chair, this is a exercise grant, and the remainder will be spent on overtime for law enforcement agencies.
The sheriff's office as well as local?
Through the chair, that is correct, sir.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-263, acceptance
Moved by
of a
legislator
grant.
Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Yolovich. Is there any discussion? Being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-264,
Moved by
authorize.
legislator Yolovich, seconded by legislator McCann. Any discussion? Legislator Haney.
As I pointed out last year, Mr. Chairman, the address for the Gay Alliance of the Genesee Valley is wrong. They moved out of that facility about 3 years ago. They're in the auditorium theater building now.
Duly noted. We'll make that adjustment. Thank you. Is there any other discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-265,
Moved by
acceptance.
legislator McCann, seconded by legislator Barker. Is there any discussion? Being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries.
Referral 11-266,
Moved by legislator
acceptance.
Barker, seconded by legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion? Being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-268, amend resolution 55.
Moved by legislator Quattro, seconded by legislator Tucciarello. Legislator Haney.
Mr. Chairman, this grant, it says, is for the period of January 1, 2011 through December 31, 2011. With approximately 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks left in 2011, how are we going to spend the $254,000?
Through the chair, this grant, yes, very quickly. We can fund any individual that's being served through the Nurse Family Partnership Program that is TANF eligible. And so we are identifying those now, and we actually will be able to fund the service for them from January 1st on. For the whole year. Any of those who have been identified as TANF eligible.
So these are people, so you have been providing services to people during the course of the year, and this money will now be used to pay for that?
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-269, acceptance.
Moved by legislator Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Yolovich. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-270, acceptance of a grant.
Moved by legislator Yolovich, seconded by legislator McCann. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries.
Referral 11-271, acceptance of a
Moved by
grant.
legislator McCann, seconded by legislator Barker. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries.
Referral 11-272, acceptance
Moved by
of a
legislator
grant.
Barker, seconded by legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-273, acceptance
Moved by
of a
legislator
grant.
Quattro, seconded by legislator Tucciarello. Legislator Haney, did you want to ask a question on this one? We are on 273.
Right.
I know I was going kind of fast, so
I'll pass.
You'll pass. Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-274, acceptance of a
Moved
grant.
by legislator Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Yolovich. Legislator Haney.
Other than the $70,000 for the nutrition programs is laid out in the first paragraph, what are we going to spend the balance of this money on?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that was the previous referral.
And I'd be happy to go back there because I know on 273 that was the.
No, okay, no, forget it.
Do you want to ask that question, Legislator Haney?
If I can't keep up with myself, it's my fault.
I even stopped for you on that.
On 274, what is the University of Rochester going to do with the money that we pay them?
Through the chair, this funds some staff that work for us in our public health preparedness program.
And these people are on the U of R payroll?
That's correct. We have a contract with the University of Rochester. In our public health preparedness program, most of the employees are county employees, but several of them work for the University of Rochester.
Okay. And what will the other $19,000 be used for? Is that being used for your employees?
Through the chair, additionally, we have a contract with the, it's only $5,000 with the Arnett Library, the public library.
Okay.
And then we have approximately $8,000 in supplies that will support this effort.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on this referral? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-275, authorized
Moved by Legislator
Monroe.
Yolovich, seconded by Legislator McCann. Is there any discussion on this referral? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-276,
Moved by
authorized.
Legislator McCann, seconded by Legislator Barker. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-277, authorized.
Moved by Legislator Barker, seconded by Legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion? Yes, Legislator Haney.
I probably should disclose I volunteer on a marketing committee with Coordinated Care Services.
Duly noted. Is there any other discussion on this matter? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-278, acceptance of a grant.
Moved by Legislator Quattro, seconded by Legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-279,
Moved by Legislator Tucciarello, seconded by Legislator Yolovich. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-280, amend
Moved by
resolution.
Legislator Yolovich, seconded by Legislator McCann. Yes, Legislator Haney.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, how does our total funding for this year compare to what we got in the prior year? Our total funding this year is $2.5 million. I'm wondering what it was last year.
Through the chair, the HEAP year just began November 16th this year. So this year's funding is, the initial allocation is $807,000, roughly. The 2010 HEAP year ended earlier this year, and I believe that's the total allocation you're referring to.
Well, we have two referrals, 280 and 281. My understanding is that 280 related to 2010-11 and 281 related to 281-12.
Through the chair, that's correct, yes.
Well, if the funding for 2010-11 was $2,515,000, I'm asking what was the funding for 2009-10?
Through the chair, I'm sorry I don't have that information available with me. I'll be happy to get it for you.
Thank you.
I'll also note that on this resolution, the Human Services Committee did amend this to read amend Resolution 177 instead of 117. That was handled at that committee, just FYI. Any other discussion on referral 280? Being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-281, authorized.
Moved by Legislator McCann, seconded by Legislator Barker. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries.
Referral 11-282, authorized.
Moved by Legislator Barker, seconded by Legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-283, authorized.
Moved by Legislator Quattro, seconded by Legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries.
Referral 11-284, authorize
Moved by
the
legislator
acquisition.
Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Yolovich. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-285, mortgage
Moved by legislator
tax.
Yolovich, seconded by legislator McCann. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those. We are on 285, mortgage tax distribution.
For,
You may, sir. 284, even though we already voted, but
right.
that's okay. 284.
Well, this sounds like a wonderful deal. Have we projected what the impact is going to be on the county operating budget?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we anticipate a net positive to the county operating budget.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, the rents you receive will exceed the operating costs?
That is correct.
Okay. How is, since there's no bond resolution, I assume you're paying for the purchase price out of your operating budget?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'll let the finance director.
Through the chair, the funding will be provided for out of the Green Space Fund that's been previously approved by this body.
Do we have to make an appropriation out of that fund?
Through the chair, the referral references where that appropriation, that this, when you pass this or authorize this referral, that the third paragraph from the bottom identifies where the appropriation will come from.
Okay, so we are in effect appropriating from that fund. Okay,
Through the chair, yes.
thank you.
Legislator Haney, you're currently, everybody's on the record as voting yes on this. Any changes? No? Very good. Going on to the next item.
285, the vote.
We are voting on 285, mortgage tax distribution. Is there any discussion on that referral? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-286, authorization.
Moved by legislator McCann, seconded by legislator Barker. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-287.
Moved by legislator
acceptance.
Barker, seconded by legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-288, amend
Moved by
resolution.
legislator Quattro, seconded by legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-294, authorize and amend.
Moved by legislator Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Yolovich. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Do we have? Yes. Okay. At this time, I'd like to ask. Yes.
Mr.
Legislator
Chairman, I would
Yolovich.
request that we adjourn to an executive session for a personnel matter, please.
I have a second by legislator Barker. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. At this time, we will enter into executive session. If I could have the chambers cleared. All members of the legislature are welcome to stay, those on this committee and those that are not, who are present at this time. one's here, I believe we're good. That's all right. Are there any other matters to come before the committee at this time? There being no further matters, Ways and Means Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Ways and Means Committee will be announced after the first of the